This presentation is about bacteriorhodopsin and its applications in computer engineering and elsewhere. Before we can talk about that, we need to talk about what this protein can actually do. So at its very base, it's a proton pump. Its application in the bacterium where it comes from is, I think it's a type of archaea, is that it's very effective at taking one proton and pumping it out. I think it's used in ATP production in order to keep an equilibrium in the cell or something. So what it is that there is this hydrocarbon called retinal, and I think it's here. There's another image later, and what it is that whenever it gets hit by a proton, there's this light-induced trans to cis isomerization. And what it does is that it changes from a trans to a cis, and that kind of changes it in a way that it can pass a proton to aspirate 85, which then takes this proton and kicks it out into the extracellular space using water molecules. So this is the excited state. And another state it can have is the standard state. And what normally in its application in the cell, it changes back into the standard state using aspirate 96, which is on the other side. And it gives another proton. And it acquires another one from somewhere else. So aspirate 96 passes a proton onto retinal, and it basically resets the whole protein. And while all this is happening, the excited and standard states, not only is the retinal changing shape, but also due to the retinal changing shape, the rest of the protein is also changing. So there's two states to this protein. So it has a fair few uses other than computing memory. It can be used in solar cells, which is pretty interesting. So on screen you can see this cool diagram. So the pink things are a type of dye, and what happens is that it hits the dye, and the dye passes a proton to the retinal, and this gets turned into electrons when retinal pumps it into something else. So I think that's actually a pretty cool application of this, because you can use proteins in making electricity. But also you can use them as optical switches and logic gates because of the way they handle protons. You can also use them as biosensors. There's also a use in this for computing memory. This protein reacts differently to different wavelengths of light. And so it's light sensitive, it has two states, and you can see how that corresponds to the ones and zeros of standard computing memory. It has applications that, according to an article written in the 90s, can be 1,000 times faster and more space efficient compared to, I guess, hard drives at the time. But even now, as we're reaching the limits of the physics limits of standard computing memory with SSDs, we can't cram any more of the transistors into one space. This protein might have an application because it doesn't rely on electrons. It's also very interesting because in the natural environment where this protein is being used, in the bacterium, this bacterium lives in a pretty extreme space. It's an archaea, so it can basically survive almost anywhere, and it usually survives very well in extreme saltiness, like League. So, and the ocean, salt ponds. So this makes this protein very effective and very durable. It survives outside of this archaea very well. It's resistant to salt, it's resistant to heat, and so this lasts very long, and we can beat the standard computing limits. So it has the potential to be pretty effective. So what are the societal impacts? Well, it has the ability to beat conventional computing, and due to the fact that it's a protein and we are coming up on more and more effective ways of genetic engineering, we can more effectively produce these proteins over time. And so it has the potential to be both better than conventional computing, but it also has the potential to be more accessible, because we can pretty effectively soon turn just random bacteria or fungi like yeast into factories for producing proteins. But as of right now, this isn't really feasible, and research has been happening since like before the internet. So it seems that while this technology does look pretty cool and has a lot of potential, it is a long way off.